Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Multipliers Leadership Podcast. We are so glad you're joining us today. Today, I'm joined with our founder, Josh Folliart, and we have the privilege to be able to have one of our good friends and guests on. His name is Jesse Lane, and Jesse's an entrepreneur. He's a leader in the business space. He is a marketing and fundraising guru is what I would call him. And he's just a true champion of people and helping them really accomplish their goals. And so, Jesse, welcome to the podcast.
So glad to be here. Let's have some fun.
Come on.
Jesse, we love what you do. We love being connected to GoodmakerU and all that has done for our organization, our company, our mission. So thank you in advance, man. Just to start things off, we owe you and we're grateful. We love what you do. And we wanted to make sure that our listeners had a chance to get to know you personally, but also what you're doing through GoodmakerU. And I've had the privilege of sitting through several presentations that you've done. And I love the way you start every time. You're always like, hey, first slide, it's your family. And you're like, I'm a girl dad. So tell us, what's it like, man? What's it like being a girl dad? And
oh man, I love it. Yeah, I've got 3 girls. And so I've got a 9-year-old, 8-year-old, and a 3-year-old right now. And that's
busy.
Greatest joy, man. I love it, dude. There's nothing greater. Like, I think people sometimes are like, you're trying to go for that boy or whatever. And I'm like, no, I fully embrace the girl dad life. And it is seriously quite the blessing and responsibility, these days. And I love it. I mean, today I had to literally, one of the hardest things I've done in a while, just sit there while my 3-year-old had a procedure in her ear. It wasn't anything major, but just hold her down while she screamed, "Daddy, daddy, daddy!"
Yeah. That's like the worst.
That's so hard.
Like, they have a piece of my heart that like no one else can just squeeze it with everything when they say daddy. And so I'm still recovering, so I just had to say that.
I think that's confession.
I'll go off script. I'll go off script immediately, because if there's one thing that all what we call multipliers have in common is, man, they want to champion their kids. They want to raise up champions for the next generation.
It's true.
What resources do you lean into? Do you and your wife, your family lean into to kind of grow as a parent? 9, 8, and 3. Those are hard seasons, man. So just give us some wisdom.
That's a great question. I could go on and on about resources. We right now we're leaning into a resource of friends of ours out of Texas that have a ministry called Crazy Cool Families. Definitely recommend they check it out. They have a book.
Very familiar.
And then there's also a couple that we love. There's a book by Jefferson Bethke that is really solid. I'm trying to remember what it's called, but it's all about being a team with your family and
family teams.
Yeah,
family teams.
It's so solid. And then there's Matt Chandler wrote a book or co-wrote a book that is about family discipleship. And it talks about moments, milestones, and there's one other M word, I think, but it's just all about seizing everyday moments, but also celebrating certain milestones and setting in rhythms. And then we also did a book with our home group all about, basically it's if you think about the power of atomic habits, but it's like for family, and it's all about building in habits I think it's called Habits of the Household. And it's all about building in daily habits of discipleship and your home, in the car, at bedtime, those moments.
That's good.
And it's just really helped shape some of those routines for us.
Oh man, Jesse, you've already given us some rich stuff. Maybe this is the direction we should have went instead. But
next episode,
I know a couple of those, but there's a couple that I don't know on there. So I'm intrigued to be able to check those things out. All those things will be in the show notes for our listeners. You don't have to write them down right away. But Jesse, you're one of those that you like to blaze new trails, and you've founded your own company. So you're an entrepreneur, and really you oversee a team with GoodmakerU. And so can you tell us a little bit more about just what GoodmakerU is, how it kind of came into existence, and really what's the heart behind what it is that you guys do, Jesse?
Yeah. So to answer your questions, GoodmakerU is all about helping nonprofits and ministries reach more people and raise more money. And so that's kind of the simple way we talk about it. What that really looks like is training leaders to do effective kind of modern marketing and communications that leads to fundraising results or whatever other results they're trying to get. If they're trying to get more people praying, more people aware, more people giving or volunteering, we work with them to build, to train them up in the strategies they need to execute and get the results they need, all so that they can do more good in the world, so they can make more good in the world. And that's why we call them good makers. And so we, it's our heart is to see impact, multiplied. So I love the word multiply. And we believe that really this is the best way, the best impact that we can have in the world is by coming alongside of the helpers, the doers, those who are on the front line, and helping them see their work multiplied by seeing their resources multiplied and their voice amplified. And so that's really what the heart is behind GoodmakerU. You may have had another question, but I can't remember what the next one was.
No, that was it. That one of the things we wanted to talk about. We know that stepping out, starting an organization, a company, a business, a nonprofit, whatever, it's all it's a challenge. And you're definitely a pioneer, a leader. But talk to us about what you've had to overcome to kind of get GoodmakerU and all that you're involved with today, where it is.
Yeah. How much time do you have?
Yeah. 24 minutes and 22 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of challenges.
They're going to time us now.
Yeah, there's a lot of challenge, but it's funny, like what just came to mind as you were saying that is actually patience, because I would say that as an entrepreneur, someone once told me before I was really started this journey full time that you are finally start your business and go all in when you realize you can't not do that. Like basically you can't shake it. And for me, this is something I kind of tried to shake for a long time. Like I really even had an entrepreneurial spirit in high school and in college, and I had things I was doing, but then of course the full-time job with the benefits and all of that, it's appealing and it's stable, you think at least. And so, and as my family grew and, all of this, it was really hard to then jump and go full-time in entrepreneurship. So I think in that journey, there was a bit of patience, waiting for God's timing, but also just trusting him that those heart desires he gave me, that I felt like were from him, were something that in time would still come about, and that I didn't have to force it to happen, and I could trust him with the timing of it all, if that makes sense. And so there was a bit of patience in there. And then once kind of we got going, the challenges just stack up, right? And you realize, you may be really good at certain things, but as an entrepreneur, you have to do all the things. And especially when you're bootstrapping it and, you're alone at first. And so you realize what you're not good at and what you don't enjoy, but you have to do it anyway. And so, that's kind of the common story, but it's so true. And so for me, there's a lot of areas of business that I have been and still am pretty weak in. And so learning those, growing in them, bringing people around me that are experts has been absolutely critical.
Man, we're kingdom people. We're an organization that is built on Jesus. Do you see yourself, and I'm just curious here, Jesse, do you see yourself as a minister kind of working in an entrepreneurial space, or do you see yourself as an entrepreneur, businessman, kind of working fueled by your faith? Just speak to that integration of faith and work for us a little bit.
Yeah, I really would say both. It's hard to say one or the other. I certainly refer to our business as a ministry often and consider it that. Like to me, like the tax status doesn't matter so much if you're a for-profit or nonprofit, but we exist to be a ministry, and we happen to be a for-profit. And I believe some of the most powerful ministry can happen in the marketplace and through entrepreneurs and change makers and people who can solve problems and be creative in that way. And it doesn't really matter if they're a nonprofit status or for-profit, and each have their perks. And we work mostly with nonprofits, but we are for-profits. So I navigate that daily. But to me, what really matters is the heart and the values. And so for us, we see ourselves as a ministry. I see myself as, definitely a minister that used entrepreneurship to to further the kingdom, and that's really where I feel like God has placed me and asked me to do, really.
So good.
I think that's a great way to say it. And for me personally, or for us, like we've seen that play out from you. And if you're around the GoodmakerU team very often, they're going to talk about mindset is everything, and being able to start with mindset, being able to really talk about or understand your own personal identity so you can step in and actually do the work that you're dreaming about. And so I've personally watched Jesse and his team lean in and say, hey, let's understand a little bit more about why you're struggling to either move forward or what's this linchpin that is actually more of a personal thing. And so I absolutely agree that there's a pastoral nature that takes place within what you do. And I love seeing that play out. And you said it a moment ago, Jesse, you said, at the very beginning, you got to surround yourself with people that maybe you're not really good at some of these certain tasks or the certain business aspect. And I think that kind of goes with the nature of everything. But I would love to know just what do you absolutely just love about your job? Like, what's the thing you're like, man, I'm glad I get to do this today because that's going to make me come alive. What part of that is you?
Yeah, there's so much really, but I would say, being around my team is so much life to me. I love the people I work with, and also the good makers are the nonprofits and ministry leaders that we're around, because I mean, the people that have decided to do that type of work are my kind of people. They're choosing to have a life dedicated to making a difference, making change, and a lot of times they love Jesus, and they're giving their life to that with sacrifices made for that. And so I get to spend time with people like that every day, and I'm just so inspired. People like you both, and I'm so inspired by those people and surrounding, and it makes me a stronger person and inspires me. And so that's one of my favorite parts for sure. But and also just knowing at the end of the day that that the work that we're doing every day has an impact, whether we see it or not, whether it's immediate or not. Sometimes it is, but we get to know that the lives are being changed, communities are being impacted because of the work that our team does, and yet we get to use our unique skill set and giftings, and we're investing that in kingdom work, and I love that.
One of the things I immediately learn from you guys when I'm around you is you guys have a for-profit mind with a nonprofit heart. And I think that makes sense to most people listening. But you, Jesse, if I'm not mistaken, are more introverted than you are extroverted. And I think sometimes the nonprofit space can be filled with a lot of ease, on the Myers-Briggs, a lot of pioneers, connectors. But I think you would test as an introvert mostly, and I just watched you be yourself. Can you just speak to, those out there who maybe have that heart as a nonprofit? Just encourage listeners, encourage us, which is some wisdom as an introvert in this space.
Yeah, sure. No, that's good. I think it's one of the first things that comes to mind is just not being ashamed of who you are or trying to be someone you're not, right? And so I think for me, as someone that tends to be introvert, I still deal with this, but I used to even more, where I wish I was more charismatic and more, of a extrovert, and especially in certain settings, right? And I have the hardest time going up and introducing myself to a stranger or interrupting a conversation so that I can make a connection or network with somebody. That is just like, I can't. But so anyway, people are good at that, and I'm like, I need to do that. And I start, as our friend Ben always said, I start shoulding on myself.
Yeah.
Right. I should.
should this, should that.
Should be able to do that.
That's a Benism.
Yeah, it's a great Benism. Shout out to Ben Richards. But yeah, I started doing that, and I should be able to talk to them. I should be able to network. I should be able to be social all day long at this conference or this event and keep going. But I've kind of stopped saying that and realizing that I don't have to be all those things, like this person that I respect or like this person that I admire. And I can just be me and trust that that's enough. And it's enough to God, but it's also, if he's called me to this, it's enough for this business.
That's
And
right.
Good.
for my role as a leader, it's enough. And I often still question that, but just kind of coming back to like, no, just be yourself and learn how to manage my own energy and know when
Yep.
what I need, and
Yeah.
that it's okay that I might need a short little walk outside before
That's great.
my
Yes.
next meeting or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's important.
Well,
That's
let me
good.
shift gears and ask you another question here. Just a little bit about your expertise and experience with nonprofits. What would you say, the average listener, average person listening right now, what would they be surprised to know about most nonprofits?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a long list, I would say, of things, but I would say that, for one, they may, I mean, I'm kind of on a kick right now, so maybe this isn't true, but
Come on.
they may be
I love your
surprised.
take, Jesse.
Yeah.
They may be surprised at how little they're getting paid. And I'm kind of an advocate that nonprofit leaders should be paid well and paid better. And it's sad to think about it this way. And I'm trying to avoid a rant here, but is that people solving the world's hardest problems are paid the least, right? And
Mhm.
it's like no one else wants to go tackle, right, the homelessness issue or poverty or this darkness around, in certain areas of the world or cities or
Yeah.
communities.
Yeah.
They're doing it. They're sacrificing a lot, working crazy in environments that are challenging, and get paid hardly anything for that
Wow.
because of the way that just the nature of things. And the reason what I don't like about that is often it's donors demanding that their funds are used a certain way. Um, it's a lack of trust for those organizations, or that there's a certain ratio of funds that are used for the work, and that doesn't include overhead or creativity or innovation or salaries oftentimes. So then those people are squeezed, and it actually limits the impact. At the end of the day, if they innovated, if they took some risks, if they failed every once in a while and hired great people, and didn't burn out, because they were paid well and could rest and recover, then I think in the end, the impact of their organization and their ministry or nonprofit could be 10x what it would be with those limits that donors impose. Now, these donors have a good heart. They're just trying to make sure the funds are stewarded well.
Yeah.
And that's the sad
Yeah.
part. It's
Yeah.
a lack of education. And so that's kind of why I wanted to go that route, because maybe there's
that's
someone
good.
here listening as a donor who's like, yeah, I want 100% of my funds to go to the needy. Well, those needy, there's 1,000 more needy people out there that will get served if that organization can go make another hire, or invest in their infrastructure, or innovate a little bit with technology. But they're so afraid to do those things because you're demanding that your funds go a certain place, or expecting that.
Yeah.
So that's just something I've seen,
Great.
just being on both sides of it, and that I like to make sure people know about.
Fantastic answer.
I think that's really good perspective for our listeners. And Jesse, we love your expertise in this area. There's so many questions that we get to ask and we get to benefit from. And you guys have a big scope as far as everything that you do. But I want to dial in a little bit more on the GoodmakerU side, something that we've benefited from, as Josh said already. Can you just explain a little bit more of like what do you guys do in the GoodmakerU space? Like, what are some of the structure opportunities there? I know we'll have a few nonprofits that'll be listening, and I'd love just to give you a chance to be able to talk about some of the heartbeat and what you guys do there.
Sure. Well, the biggest reported challenges that nonprofits will consistently say is that they just don't have the funds they need to do to grow, to have more impact. They're struggling to keep the lights on. They don't have the funds they need. And so we hear that so often. Well, so what we've done is developed world-class training that's accessible, it's affordable, to help them understand how to promote and raise funds, to share their story and rally support and get the funds they need. So we have cohorts and classes. We call them masterclass. We have a mastermind. And with those, we are training nonprofit leaders together in community settings where they can collaborate, where they can learn from an expert, where they can get their questions answered, sometimes questions that they're embarrassed to ask, or they have nowhere else to ask them. They don't know where to go with those, and they can have a safe space to discuss those and then learn from their peers as well as our team, and kind of get coached through that and guided through that. And so we walked them through that, and we were just seeing remarkable results from some of our programs. We have one that's a 60-day masterclass, and through that, we've just seen organizations raise on average 10 times more than they've raised in the years past, which is just incredible. And so seeing, and what I get excited about is they're reporting, we raised 10 times more than last year. But what I get even more excited about is that they're confident now. They know how to fundraise. They're not afraid to invite people into their story, into their giving experience. They don't feel bad about asking for money. They realize, no, they flipped the switch, and they're now confident in their fundraising. And so that's huge. And just the fact that from then on, every new campaign, every new opportunity, they're able to continue to grow on what they learned through us, that over time, that's going to impact the organization in really significant ways, which impacts people's lives at the end of the day.
I think that's a really good framework that you gave to us as listeners. I kind of liken it to that of going to work out, where when you go at the very beginning, you're like, I don't fully know what I'm doing here, but I look at the instructions that says on the machine, I'm like, I can do that. And that's kind of what it feels like in the nonprofit space, where there's so many things you could do, and there's so many things you can watch, and you're just like, but what do I actually need to do? And I think we've been in some of that space in certain ways, and I love that you show like, hey, this is the best way to be able to do this. And everything from, we're talking email marketing to who are you and what's your mindset, right? And so I love that you give some handles and some tools there, but not just to raise money, but I love that you always tie it back to the impact that it has for the organization and the impact for what you're doing. And I'm just super thankful to be able to see that side of it. And we've definitely been a beneficiary as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, I'm just, I continually, every time around you, I'm learning. And, you guys, your motto of raise more to reach more, in a sense, is really, that's the key to multiplication, is when you're able to raise more, there is an exponential curve to the way nonprofits work. And, there's when the staffing's in place and the messaging's in place, and you can just really begin to see some multiplied impact. And so what you guys do with GoodmakerU is absolutely essential, vital. And I hope that every nonprofit hearing this gets a chance to be a part of what we've walked through, and getting a chance to connect with you, with Ben, with your whole team. It feels like a friendship, a partnership, and I think that's critical also. So the relationships are valuable. Jesse, you're kind of always on the cutting edge. You've got things you're learning. You're always growing. You're always bringing new stats, new data, new thoughts
all the time
into the leadership space
in the best way.
We want to know, like, as a leader, as a multiplier, you call us good makers, we call you guys multipliers. But what are you learning right now, just as a leader, as a multiplier?
Well, I'm learning a lot. I feel like God is uses my business. How they say, I love this quote, that marriage is just a way, God uses to teach us and about ourselves. And so, in the same way, business can be that, right? And there's things that God's teaching me all the time. But combining marriage and business for a second, something I'm learning right now is actually from my wife. She's an educator, and with GoodmakerU, we're educating, right? A lot of what we're doing is educating. And I don't have that experience. My background is in marketing, fundraising, nonprofit, business, but education is really what we need to be doing. And so she's helping me learn how people learn, and it's been so fascinating.
It's great.
And I think I've got a lot still to learn there, but of just, one of the most simplest things is, the whole idea of like, watch me do it, let's do this together, and then you go do it. And just kind of how often we try to skip past that. There's so much free education right there. And I feel like in your question about being on the cutting edge, I'm supposed to talk about AI and how we're using it, but and we are a lot.
I'm not even here. I'm in the AI.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. This is not me, but yeah. So we're using AI and all that, and there's ways to learn from it. You can build, like, literally in 5 seconds, I could build a whole learning education plan, and it's great. But without that learning together, that do it together situation, I feel like we're missing that. That is really the sweet spot. And she was helping me see that, like, if you try to skip past that, a lot of times the lesson isn't actually learned, the growth doesn't happen, people get stuck. They need to have that space to explore, to fail, to ask questions. And if there isn't a coach, if there isn't a mentor, if there isn't a multiplier, a leader around someone, it's really difficult. And I think God made us that way, right? So we're not able to just go do much all by ourselves, and learning's like that too. And so we're trying to incorporate that into our GoodmakerU education programs, and that's something I'm learning a lot about right now.
Yeah, the quote that comes to mind is just this idea that in a world addicted to technology, the touch factor has never been more important, right?
Yeah.
It's in education and mentorship, and technology is vital, but man, it can't replace people. And
exactly.
I heard Alan Platt say this years ago: people are God's program. That will never change.
Yeah,
people are God's program, and setting systems up to serve people, not the other way around. So
that's a good word.
I love what you said about that, and I feel like we should get your wife on the podcast next time.
So. No, she's way smarter than me, for sure.
Yeah, I love even just when you mentioned a second ago, Jesse, even just the idea of having a coach, and even coupled with what you said, Josh, like the more that I'm in certain areas or spaces, the more I realize that, man, there are experts that you can learn from and grow from and multiply your impact so much faster. And so why wouldn't you want to lean in and get a coach in really every aspect of your life, at least the ones that make sense and where you need it. And so that is something that I'm continuing to learn. But Jesse, I know you're continuing to learn, but you're also dreaming about probably the future and what's kind of up and coming. And you may not be able to get the full picture, but can you just give us a little bit of an insight as to what you're dreaming about?
Yeah, I mean, my big dream is just to see the Goodmaker world, like Goodmakers everywhere, have a complete vision, a God-sized vision of what's possible, right? So we talk a lot about mindset, and often there's a scarcity mindset. And yet I want to see ministry leaders, multipliers, Goodmakers out there believing in, the kingdom power, the spirit power, and just walking in it, so that there is no limits, there's no ceilings keeping them from changing the world, to spreading the gospel, to serving people well. And so it's both in their discipleship and in their capacity as a leader, growing together so that they can do more than they could ever ask or imagine through the power of the Spirit. And so I know that seems vague, but ultimately we know that the work that we do, paired, both the education and, again, the mindset and their own kind of relationship with God comes together, that the potential is more than we can even dream up, right? And so I want to see Goodmakers unleashed in that way around the country. And ultimately, I want to see, after that, because of that, the church awakened to God's purposes in the earth. And often I'm sad to see when, the church, it feels, in some pockets like it's not paying attention to what God's doing around the world and around them. And I think Goodmakers, nonprofit leaders, ministry leaders like you guys you're trying to wake up the church, and we want to see that happen too. At the end of the day, like, let's go, let's rally, and the kingdom come as it is in heaven. So
you must be a creative pioneer when it comes to the leadership voices. I don't know if you've taken the 5 voices
no, I haven't.
Or exam.
I'll send it to you after this.
Yeah, we'll send it. So you got to be a creative. The creative is out front. They see something that's doable, possible. Yeah. They're the early adopters. They're on board. They have a message. And the pioneer part is willing to blaze a trail to go see it happen. And man, thank you for inviting us into the journey that you are a part of. And man, we just consider you family. And you're one of our closest friends and collaborators kind of in this space. So thank you. And we're honored to journey alongside of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I love about what you said a moment ago, Jesse, is that, if we have the spirit of the living God in us, then we have access to all the creativity, all the wisdom, all the business, all the insight. And so we shouldn't be second best in anything. And so listeners, I'm going to leave us with that today, is that whatever space you're in, you shouldn't be second best, because you have access to the King and he's got the best. And so whether you need a coach or whether you need something like this, it's a podcast or something to develop your skill set, lean into that, because God's got something for you. Hey, but Jesse, thank you again. As Josh said, you are a friend of ours, as for us personally, for us as an organization, and we're just so thankful for your time. Hey, we'll give all the details from everything that we mentioned in the show notes. There's a lot of good stuff in there, a lot of rich things, and we encourage you to be able to check it out. Hey, and we'll see you guys again in another couple weeks. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.